You did it. You made it through the preseason. Okay, there's still a couple of hours ago, and honestly, some big decisions to make. But in this, our final episode of the preseason, we're going to answer some of the most in-demand questions that came to us from our Patreons. We're so thankful for our paid-up Patreon supporters. If you're not a part of the army yet, you need to do so, because if you're at a cash cow or a breakout tier, you'll get an additional podcast in season from us every single week that drop on a Friday morning. It is a Q&A episode. It is the only place we do question and answers is for our Patreon. So cash cows and breakout tiers, you will get that. And breakout tiers, not only, well, premiums rather, should I say, not only do you get that Q&A episode, you also on a Monday get a round review episode. It's the only place we in-depth go game by game, player by player, and see what trends have evolved. So if you're not a paid-up Patreon member, we'd love for you to do it. Not only does it support us here at the Coaches Panel, you also get some additional content just for getting involved. All the details in the description of this episode. I want to dive into some of these questions that our Patreons have given. We've rolled them up into, a thematics, because there's a lot of crossover. Here we go. Dylan's got a question. He says, hey, MJ, I'm keen on Callahan. I think it's his breakout year with Green out early. Do you think we can start him with his round 2 bye, or should we wait after his bye as a target? Look, great question, Dylan. Obviously, it to a degree is a level of format dependent in terms of informing all elements. I'll flat out put it this way. In SuperCoach and Dream Team, the answer is an absolute no. You cannot start him, and I'm happy to explain why. He does sit in that mid-price value range for us, where Day sits there, Chera sits there, Peatling sits there, Oliver sits there, a little bit lower, Hollands sits there. There's a ton of options, right? The difference of what Callahan is in contrast to those two, while he is a week ahead of the price movement of these other names, is he's got a buy, and he's got a big uncertainty about how this functions with Tom Green in the mix. I would give myself at least one more week of information, which is this game, to see what lands. At time of recording, nothing has been confirmed about Tom Green, although alluded to him playing. I just think in SuperCoach and Dream Team, the risk profile you're adding to your side and unknowing is just too high, because he's going to be on the bubble. You'll at least get another week. You'll see where your other mid-prices are, so your Days, your Peatlings, your Cheras, whoever's, all in there, will also be on the bubble at the conclusion of round 2, and you'll have an informed decision to make. And therefore, if Peatling, for illustration's sake, is struggling, Callahan performs well with or without Green, at least you've got information, and they're going to be coming in at that same amount of games played left. I just think in Dream Team and SuperCoach, you're just adding to a risk profile you just don't need. Therefore, I'm not too much of a fan. AFL Fantasy, it is to a degree a little bit different, because you're getting a double price movement and the acceleration. I'd consider looking at it if you're not pursuing a Sam Taylor and looking at that 1 week pivot. To me, it's got to be a little bit more of a bigger commitment than just the 1 week. I know you might be like, oh, well, I could do that and then jump on to Peatling, jump on to Chera, jump on to whoever, go down to the rookie, take it up to the premium. Yeah, it does create all those options. But to me, while I love Callahan, I'd still want that level of information in AFL Fantasy too. So can you start him? Absolutely. While he is going to accelerate in price nicely, the fact that he's not playing in a week's time really does dampen my spirits with the options that are there. And politely, he could not have played better. And this sounds terrible to say, he only scored 110 in AFL Fantasy. So he could not have been more prolific, more dominant, more scoreboard impact. And we're talking about a guy who just went over the 100. Yes, we've got a banked price movement already rolled in there. I want to see Green. I want to get that extra week. So for me, the answer is no, Dylan, across the formats. But if someone wanted to start him in AFL Fantasy, I think that's the format. It's a conversation, at least. Whereas the other two, it's an absolute easy no is the answer. There's no other decision as far as I'm concerned. On the back of that, Gurish has gone, hey, MJ, should I prioritize starting in my side, Day or Callahan? Look, as always, it's format dependent, but if it's AFL Fantasy, I find going against Will Day now almost impossible. Yes, he could cop a couple of 80s and some tags that's sitting through there. But when I look at the price point of him, I look at, even if he just goes at 80, which is even just a fraction over what his price is, by the time he gets to his buy, he's still going to have generated $100,000 at a minimum. And that's assuming he goes at his price point over the next 3 weeks. Really, to me, the only real danger game is the Bedford tag. I know there could be some other negating roles that come, but we just have to wait and see. To me, if it's a 50-50 split right now, I'm taking Day across the formats of those two. But I don't think in SuperCoach and Dream Team it's a must move. It's a consideration to look and see. If you'd not considered him before this period of time, it's another factor. But to me, Day or Callahan in AF, it's Day for day late. I think it's hard to go against him in that format, although possible. SuperCoach and Dream Team, a little bit more of a conversation, but I would still pick Day over Callahan. Jack Farnell has a question. Hey, MJ, could you help me decide between these D5 and D6 spots in AFL Fantasy? Love to, Jack. Let's help you out. Humphreys, Evans, Freesia, and SDK. Look, the fact that you've got Humphreys and Evans, I actually really love. They were names I know we considered early days in the preseason, but as we get closer to the start of round one, there is a groupthink consensus where we want to stay with the pack, and so we don't go too unique for the sake of getting burnt. I think the beauty of what you've got here is I actually don't mind Evans as a free hit look. It's a decent early fixture for Port Adelaide, and so I actually think he could be the ceiling guy of all of them. SDK is only a starter if he's sole ruck. So Stanley, for example, if he's named, you can't go near SDK. Blix is going to get named regardless. Neil's going to play relief ruck. If SDK is named as the ruck with no Stanley, I'd proceed there. And Freesia, I quite like him as a name too. Personally, the ownership consensus is the last two, Freesia and SDK. But I think the beauty of what you've got there at 4 and 5 is you've got a parachute option. So if you go a Freesia and SDK, you can jump into Evans. But that Humphreys is probably out of the mix to me, just personally, with Max Holmes pushing down back, Bailey Smith's athletic capacity to push back. I'd probably lean to the final two. And again, there's a bit more safety and ownership that sits there. But Evans, I think, is a really great shout, Jack, and someone to absolutely consider. Matthew has a question. It's draft related. I hope, Matthew, you've got your draft done by now. If not, that's all right. Maybe you're looking for a little bit of help with a decision that you made in your draft league and trying to make a movement off that. But where in a single season draft would you be looking at the injured players? The Treloar, the Bontempelli, or Butters? Yeah, great question. I think the rules of how many on your bench and how many on field definitely factor that in. And do you have an injury list, which the Keeper platform can create as an outlet option for you, where you can stash these guys if they're in that long-term injury category, which those guys all are, and you can pick up options. I would think no earlier than the 3rd round would I be prepared to go. And you do have to go a little bit deeper on mids on draft day. So I hope that's what you did, Matthew. I think Bont or Butters, you could go as early as the 3rd round. 4th is probably where more normative it'll be. Treloar, based on his ADP, has slidden quite drastically. I think you could get him a little bit later. Well, it sounds like he's the most likely to play early of them. So I think no earlier than the 3rd round for Bont and Butters. I think the 4th and 5th will be the more commonplace of where he actually went. And Treloar, I think he could get the double digits before he's going to fly off the draft board. Tony's got a question. He says, now that we know where the Gold Coast Suns and Bombers are playing in the future, do you fade these teams as starting picks? Great question, Tony. So if you've missed the news, yes, of course, they're out of opening round. That has been well documented, but that's now been put at the end of the season. I would absolutely fade my interest in almost all Gold Coast players anyway, and non-positionally scarce Bombers, I would do the same. The reason them and not, say, the Brisbane Lions or Geelong is they don't have the bye anymore. These Suns and Bombers do. So, for an example, a Kako, well, a really good rookie option. We know he's been confirmed to debut this week. He's got good job security. He seemed to score okay in the community series, albeit through tackles and goals, which is a lot of the scoring elements where our small forwards come from. My hesitation with picking a Kako type for illustration, and Suns rookies, should we get any, none have been announced at time of recording, is they still have their bye, meaning they're one game short and there's no accelerated price movement. So as a result, they get to their bye in a week or 3 weeks' time, and they're already stuck a week in their cash generation cadence compared to anybody else. They're one short. I just don't think you can do that. The community is too clever now at generating cash quickly, using their trades wisely, and not wasting their salary cap at the start to just see it get whittled away with 3 or 4 top price guys. The community's evolved in their thinking and adapted to how to play the game. And so when we talk about players that could be making you money, I'd absolutely be fading interest in them unless there is positional scarcity, which is where a Reed and a Pryor come into a different level of conversation to me, because there's nobody really else. There's a trainer at Richmond, and there's a pattern in SuperCoach. Beyond that, nothing really that sets the world on fire to me. So it becomes different because there's the scarcity of options is so low, whereas forward rooks, we've got a ton. Midfield rooks, we've got a ton. So to me, I'd almost fade interest in all Suns and all Bombers, with the exception of the defenders from Essendon. Sardis is a conversation I'll hear in SuperCoach and in Dream Team. I know he is going to be that week behind, but with no Parish, he's got a bit more of a secure role and a bit more of a clearer scoring ceiling. But again, I don't think he's a vital or an essential option to roll through there. Hope that answers your question. Gersh is double dipped. Okay, mate, why not? What are your thoughts on Noah Anderson as a SuperCoach option? His early fixture is amazing, but the lack of early cash movement and the round 2 buy is an ideal. Yeah, it is, Gersh. I'd honestly trade into him after round 2. To me, with that early buy and then no acceleration, he'll still be on the bubble. He'll still be an option. What he gives you post-buy as well. Ian's SuperCoach is, while he's a good matchup this week, you get to see a little bit, but he gives you the outlet option of, say, you're running Callahan. Well, Callahan's not the right pick, but the Cherras, the Peatlings, the Hollands, the mid-price madness mid. I don't know too many coaches that don't have at least 2 of these guys, and you can put Clayton Oliver into that conversation as well. Should multiple of them underperform, what Anderson, if you are bullish, Gersh, just gives you the option to drop one of those mid-prices down to the rookie that you've missed that's flying, and go up and get yourself an Anderson if he really is someone you want. So to me, that is absolutely the way I'd play it. I wouldn't be going in blind, knowing that you're a guy that's probably one of your most expensive mids isn't going to be playing in a week's time. I just couldn't do that to you, Gersh. To me, I absolutely would look for something else. Oh, why do people do this with their names? Pokebum Nags. That is not a phrase I ever thought I would say on the internet, but here we are. G'day, MJ. Now that Bailey Smith's buy in round 3 is out of the equation, is he now a higher risk of a sub or a rest in the first 10 weeks or so? I don't think it's elevated the risk, but I also don't think it's diminished it either. I just think the fact that when you look at what he's priced at, even with an 80s score, which I think is on the lower end of probabilities, it's still exceptional value to be running into. I just think you're probably getting overly cute early. Look, if he stinks it up in the first couple of weeks, jump down to the forward cash cow you missed. And one of those could be an Elijah Hewitt, for an example, that, again, at time recording, he's not named, but he did full training this week and most of last. They do love the dynamic he brings that's different to their side. He might be the forward rook that people miss. Could drop down to a Garcia if he pops, for example. I'd rather start him rather than get creative to find a way to get into him, because if he does get a sub or if he does get a rest, look, outside of this week, the next 3 are best 18s, so you're protected. In addition to that, his ownership has you so well protected across the formats that, to me, the risk is greater to go against him, knowing his potential to pop, rather than just getting overly cute. To me, I think there's other places to do it. I have no problem if people are fading him for other reasons. That's a different conversation, especially without seeing him in the community series at all. That's fine. But if it's worried about subs and vests, to me, that's probably not enough of a reason. It's got to be because you like other value options more. You're wanting to run deeper with premium forwards of the Ranken, the Horn-Francis, and he's the guy that's fallen out or become the outlet to get up. That's a different conversation rather than sub-risk, resting, all those kind of things. To me, if they come, you're with the pack and you can diverge from there, rather than the pack have got a guy that offers unbelievable value. And even if he goes just an 80, it's still not a knockout pick, but he's making you some serious bank. Andrew, second last one. I've tried to bring a couple of these in together. MJ, love the content. You guys are the best. Thank you, mate. We appreciate that. I know forwards have the value, but I do feel Davidson at F6 and pay up for D6 is a play. 100% it's a play. Is it a must to do that? No, it's not. And I think part of that is, what are the value components? How are you structuring up elsewhere? What does those things do for you? Because again, are you running a Sheasel at D1 or not? Are you running a D1 that you feel you're going to hold for chunks of the year? The Stewarts, the Ryans, the Sinclairs, the Wanganeen Millers, the Zorkos, these type of guys? Or are you running a bit of value and starting with a short type? Well, that changes what you can do in other positions, and whether or not a Garcia or even a Wicks become guys you look at F6. Is it a viable play? It is 1,000%, Andrew, a viable play. And I've got 2 forward rooks that I would happily field. You could argue it's 3, but it's really 2. To me, it is Davidson, and Elijah Hewitt is the other, should he be named. If you want to go and see the rest of my rookie rankings, I've put them into on-field, nice bench options, speculative, but might play and should play but have question marks on this channel. Go back. I've done my last-minute rookie ranks. You can go and check that out. Covers across all the formats. But Andrew, the short answer to your question is yes, I think you can, and I actually think it's a really nice selection. It follows it on with the second part is, what do we make of Treloar with him potentially being back in the next 2 to 3 weeks? I do think that's possible. I think that's more likely to be a damaging impact on a Riley Sanders, should he come back straight into the AFL system, over a Davidson. Davidson's got a wing spot. Every year, Beveridge seems to fall in love with a player that just is all heart, all work rate, buys in to the Bulldogs' sacrificial mantras that has come from the second tier and the state leagues, and just become his guy that they run for a long period of time. We've seen that now for a number of years, and I think Davidson is just another one of those guys. He's got the wing spot locked up as far as I'm concerned. He's not yet named to debut, but I absolutely have him as a lock to do it. But I don't think Treloar is going to hurt Davidson. I think Treloar back might hurt Sanders and just how big of a option he is. You know, to bring it back to PB Nanks, yeah, I'm not saying that name again. Question about Smith. I'd rather fade Sanders over Smith, because Sanders, you're believing he's going to get the role and the opportunity because of injuries to Bont and Treloar. Whereas Smith, you know that the role is his, that he's going to be in the midfield playing a combination of inside, outside, and they're going to want to use that tank all day, every day. So to me, if I was fading either, Sanders over the 2. So, yeah, Treloar is back a little earlier. It does cool the Jets on Sanders. But again, worst case scenario, you'd throw him down to the forward that really is ballooning out, that you have to get your hands on at that money-making space, either on the bubble in SuperCoach or Dream Team, or the moment Treloar's back in AFL Fantasy, and bank what you can and go. So it's a play, but if I was fading one of the two, I know that's not your question, Andrew, but it's there. Treloar doesn't impact him at all. Hey, last question we want to get into is from Corey Blackledge. Patreons will know it's not a Q&A session without Corey getting involved with. So thankful that he, and like you, get involved and ask all these questions. In SuperCoach, is it a good idea to have Rankin and Horne-Francis at F1 and F2? I'm not going to say it's a bad idea. I wouldn't say it's a good idea either. Now, that sounds like a fence sit, I know. And what I mean by a good idea is the implication of saying, yeah, it's a good idea to do that, is it means if you're not doing that, it's a bad idea, which is absolutely not the case. I do believe both of those two offer unbelievable value. And I'm of the belief that in SuperCoach, I would advocate heavily for at least one of them at F1. Yes, you could start the McRaes, the Smiths, the Daniels, that run the value that is there. And I would be doing all of those. But to me, both of these guys offer something different and for different reasons could really pop their scores. This week, Horne-Francis at the MCG, Saturday night, against Collingwood, he could absolutely tear them apart. Perryman might try to play some form of defensive-minded role, but he's not that type of Bedford tagger. Perryman is more, yes, defensively minded, but it's actually about positionally and structurally how he sets up to enable the likes of a Dacos, when fit, Degoe to be the aggressors and to be attacking minded and know that they're in their ability to try to win the ball and surge the game forward for their team, in that deficiency that sometimes creates defensive liabilities. Perryman is their fail-safe that scoops that up and protects it. And so Perryman, while a defensive-minded mid, is not a defensive-minded mid as a tagger per se, but rather he's the protection outlet that enables them to be fully aggressive with their best two attacking mids. So while I could see a Perryman sitting with Horne-Francis at stoppages, good luck keeping up with him speed-wise. He just can't do that. So I think Horne-Francis, alongside a next couple of weeks for Port, looks really inviting. Richmond sits in the next couple. I love him as a unique option that could genuinely sit with captaincy territories. While Rankin has a better forward mid split than I thought. I thought it might be closer to sort of 60% forward, 40% mid. The more I hear about it, it's probably more entirely switched, if not a higher midfield percentage. And we talk about a guy that's unbelievably underrated and strong at clearance, still impacts the scoreboard, doesn't butcher the ball, uses it well. And again, we talk about a team that's got a nice early fixture. The Crows have as favourable as they could have without having the likes of a West Coast or a Richmond in that first 5 or 6 weeks. So I see a world where both of these guys can, in SuperCoach, start the year with a basement over the first month of 110 plus. That's probably where I've got them at the moment. But to answer your question in truth, Corey, is it a good idea to have both? I think it's a viable play. What I think is a good idea, by meaning good, I mean, in my opinion, it's pretty critical that you have at least one of those two. Having both changes your structure, and you might not want that. But I think you need at least one of Horne-Francis or Rankin in SuperCoach. You don't have to, but I think it's pretty viable given what their start of season is, what their run is, what their team dynamic and the lack of question marks around them is. All the things just indicate to me one of them is pretty critical. Both of them is nice to have, and to use your term, good. But is it essentially good? No, I don't think you have to run them both at F1 and F2. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in, friends. We hope you've enjoyed not only this real rapid-fire quick Q&A episode. I didn't want to make it too long because the last thing you want to do is listen to a 90-minute podcast in the final 24 hours before the Thursday night lockout. If you are listening to this at any point in time over the couple of days of lockout, can I give you some advice? There's a couple of episodes that I'd love you to go back and check out that I think we've deliberately made them short enough here on the channel too that they're going to help you out. One of them is our Rookie Ranks episode. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you go back and do that. Like I said, it looks at line by line players I think that I'm happy to put on field. Guys, I'd be happy as bench options. Guys, I think will play early, meaning the first month or so of the year, but have got some concerns around either role, job security, or the vest. And then there's the speculative picks that could play, but I think could be in and out. I've done that for every single line, and as players get confirmed to debut, even more so over the next couple of days, that episode, I believe, will help you to know who should I be putting on field and prioritizing how many that you should be able to go and get. I'd go and listen and watch that episode if you haven't already. Another is our last minute checklist. It's got about 8 bits of advice that will just help you not panic, not get chaotic, and not get frantically lost in these final few hours before lockout or once lockout's in, how to not destroy your team after hours and hours and months potentially of work being put in. That sits in there for you as well. And then the last one is the episode just prior to this one, our final preseason strategy episode. Myself and Mini Mike sit down and discuss all the big talking points ahead of round 1 and ahead of how you lock away your structure. So if you haven't checked out those, go and check them out. If you have, go back and re-listen to them. I think there's some rich conversations for you to go and check out and enjoy. Hey, friend, thank you so much for letting us be a part of your fantasy football preseason. So many of you have just found and discovered the coaches panel this preseason. We hope you have enjoyed your first preseason with us. We thank you if you've just subscribed to the channel, given us a 5-star rating, liked, commented, got involved with us. We're so thankful. If you're just brand new to the coaches panel, you're absolute superstars. We hope you've enjoyed your first preseason. If you're a returning listener and viewer, we love having you back. We hope we've been able to support and encourage and challenge you and give you the information you need to make informed decisions through this preseason yet again. And probably the biggest thank you of all goes to not only the people that help make and support the coaches panel. So John Brids is behind in and around a bunch of things. We don't have the coaches panel without Rids, by the way, although he's very much out of the content creation space. Louis, Jordox, Jimmy, Fish, Tim is in there, Fox is in there, and then Kane and Mini Monk, who you've seen a lot throughout the preseason, as well as Jordox. We're super thankful for those guys for giving up their time and being a part of the fantasy journey with us just to this point, and also to our Patreons for not only your financial support, but just your encouragement right throughout the preseason. We hope you have enjoyed our biggest and best preseason to date. We've never done an episode per day in a preseason, but we did it for you this year. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you found it worthwhile. Thanks so much for tuning in. Good luck as you head into this round of footy. We'll be with you early next week. Multiple episodes will be dropping here on the channel to help you review the round it was, make the decisions you need to make those corrections, and to get your team either on course again or to stay ahead of the pack. Have a great round 1. I hope your captain kills it. I hope you win rookie roulette and get all the right guys on field and all your mid prices pop. Until we chat to you next week here on the channel, we wish you well, and we'll chat to you on the other side of round 1.